Hello bike geeks. From weight to wheels, price to performance, we are here to take a close look at bicycles so you can make an educated decision when selecting your next bike. In today's video, we're taking a look at the new 2024 Marin DSX 2. The DSX 2 is the middle of a 5-bike lineup of DSX models from Marin. The DSX 1 and 2 both got their first refresh since this bike model got released about 4 years ago. This has been an extremely popular model overall, and I think it's because it basically stands out compared to virtually everything else on the market. This particular model is $1,649 in Canada or $1,289 in the United States, and it is a 24.25 pound all-around flat bar gravel, commuter, pathway, single track, everything kind of a bike. In today's video, we're going to go over the details, so hopefully you understand why this bike is easily worth the $1,649 and if this is the bike for you. So Marin markets this bike as a flat bar gravel bike. I think that's done so because the gravel segment is basically trending right now, but this is way more than a gravel bike, and I think gravel is just an easy way to sum up, in a way that a lot of people understand, a bike that is going to be equally as good, sprightly, light on pavement as it is on things that aren't quite so perfect, like smooth single track, gravel roads, anything in between. I personally would call this a commuter, I would call it a pathway bike, I'd call it a gravel bike, I'd call it an everything short of a mountain bike, and I'm sure there are going to be people who are going to try and challenge that and use it as a mountain bike because bike geeks seem to have a habit of trying to use a bike well beyond what it was ever designed for. The most exciting thing about this bike to me is really the fact that they're taking the hybrid category, which is a little bit of a dying market in my opinion, and they're actually making it exciting. And that excitement comes both from the shape of the bike, just looking at it, it doesn't look like a standard hybrid, and in turn the way the bike rides. So with this bike having quite a short rear end on it and quite a slack head tube angle in comparison to everything else in the hybrid market, it really gives it a great combination of sort of snappy acceleration, get up and go, maneuverability, with that slacker head tube angle really giving it a little bit more of a mountain bike stability sort of a feel. So this is a unique bike within this whole hybrid commuter flat bar gravel segment. When I was doing my research for this video, I had a look quickly at things like the Specialized Cirrus X and Trex FX bikes, and just the aesthetic of those bikes, in my opinion, is just, it kind of looks like an old person's bike. They're not exciting, they have really long stems on them, steep head tube angles, and I basically look at those bikes and I'm instantly turned off by the fact that they kind of look like road bikes with fat tires and straight handlebars. What we're looking for, if we're looking in this category, in my opinion at least, is a bike that is bringing the simplicity of a 1x drivetrain and a fun, maneuverable, stable sort of a bike, and I think the DSX delivers really well on that promise. As mentioned before, this is the middle of a 5-bike lineup. 4 of the bikes out of that 5 share the same general makeup, which is a frame of this shape and a rigid fork. The very base model of the DSX comes with an aluminum fork, and then the other 3 versions of the rigid forked DSX come with this nicely shaped carbon fiber fork. The carbon fork is put on there for a couple different reasons. Carbon is going to obviously be light. It has a beautiful aesthetic where it actually carries on the nice thickness of this tapered steer tube. But carbon also has a neat quality, and a lot of why you see it used on road bikes is the fact that carbon really absorbs a lot of fine vibrations while staying light. In many cases, when carbon is being used, it's trying to replicate the feel of chromoly while reducing the weight and giving a nice modern aesthetic. I think this bike does a beautiful job of that. So the refresh this year on the DSX2 is largely about the color. This DSX2 was a brown bike with some sort of rainbow stripes in place of where there's now these sort of chromic reflective things going on, and then same thing with the down tube deckling and stuff up here. The bike was really well liked as far as specifications in the past, but I was amazed at how many people didn't like the sort of chocolate brown with rainbow stripes aesthetic. I thought it had a really nice sort of vintage inspired theme, but I do think that this new red, dark red, almost root beery kind of sparkly color is going to be a little bit more appealing to a lot of people. So as I carry on with this, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about all the working bits and pieces, and just hopefully leave you with enough information that if you're looking for something with a rigid fork, a lightweight bike that you can blast around pathways, streets, smooth single track, gravel, hopefully by the end of this you'll feel a little bit more educated as to whether or not this DSX is a suitable next bike for you. So the DSX name comes from the D and the S is dual sport, which is a fairly commonly used sort of industry talk for hybrid these days. So dual sport, and then the X stands for the 1x drivetrain that is shared on all of the DSXs. Not that they share the same 1x drivetrain, but the fact that it is a 1x specific bike. And that 1x specific part is largely about this unique frame feature where it's got this flattened out seat tube here, which both creates a little bit more tire clearance on the back while keeping a very short rear end. But that shape also means that there is no way to mount a front derailleur on this bike. So right off the bat, if you're looking at this bike and you think, I'm interested, but I love front derailleurs, I love having a little bit of extra noise and things to complain about on my bike, I would personally look at something like the Marin Fairfax being the closest thing to the DSX, but with a 2x drivetrain that they put on there. As part of the 1x drivetrain thinking, we also have a little bit broader tire on here. So this is a WTB Riddler. It is a 45C tire. It comes stock with a tube inside. It is not a tubeless compatible tire, but that might be something that if somebody was looking to really get a lot of performance out of one of these bikes and was going to spend a lot of time riding rough terrain, doing the upgrade down the road to tubeless might be a thing to consider. As I'm looking at this tire, we can see the tread pattern is sort of a micro knobby on there. So this is going to be a tire that is designed around shared usage of some pathway, some dirt, some gravel, whatever. With that 45C tire, we have a look at these chain stays and the clearance here, and then up on the fork, and we have quite a bit of clearance. On the front, I wouldn't be concerned at all about going up to something like a 29 by 2.1. And yes, a 700C rim is the same as a 29-inch rim. So I think a 2.1 would fit up here. But even though Marin's official word is that a 29 by 2.1 would fit, it's hard to show this one, but I don't think that the clearance down at the chain stays would really give enough clearance that you could actually ride a 2.1 and ride through any sort of mud without really dragging mud against the frame, or if you were cornering hard and having things flex and having a tire rub against the frame. So I would personally say I'd feel comfortable maybe going up to a 50C tire in the back, which is roughly a 49, what did I say? Roughly a 2-inch tire, which is roughly the same as a 49, or a 50C tire. In the front you could go 2.1, which is the same as about a 53 or 54 if we're into that metric equivalent. As we look at the drivetrain on here, one of the steps up between the DSX1 and the DSX2 is the fact that we actually step up to a Dior 12-speed drivetrain. So Shimano Dior is a popular mountain bike drivetrain and basically considered to be the first of the performance level of mountain bike componentry. You basically have Dior SLX, XT, XTR as the what we call performance level of mountain bike stuff. So we're at a very good level of componentry, and that Dior level would come on probably some similar or slightly higher price point hardtail mountain bikes. One thing that isn't truly Shimano is this Sunrace cassette. So it goes from 11 to 51 teeth. If this was truly a Dior level cassette, it would go from 10 to 51 teeth and would use a slightly different hub to make that possible. In this case, the hub is an in-house Marin branded one, and it's just using a standard HG free hub body, and that is why we are limited to starting at 11 teeth. But still, 11 to 51 teeth combined with this 42 tooth narrow-wide chainring that we have on the cranks gives us a huge range of gears. You shouldn't balk on any hills, and you're probably going to be able to get up to 50 plus kilometers an hour, which is 30 miles an hour roughly, without spinning out your cadence. So I think a very appropriate range of gears, and you shouldn't have any sort of hesitation as far as gear range just because you're looking at that single front chainring. As we look at these cranks, there's a reason that I've actually delayed this video, and that is that these FSA Gossamer cranks are a pretty noticeable upgrade from the no-name cranks that are on the Marin specs on the website. And so when I got this first one of these DSXs in stock a couple months ago, we pulled it out of the box, saw these Gossamers, and I thought this was going to be a one-off anomaly. We have now pulled a couple more of these out of boxes and seen the same thing. So I'll show this. I'll talk about the fact that I think that this is a very nice crank set, both because you have a nice replaceable chainring on there. It's just high quality. We have external FSA threaded bearings in the bottom bracket. A number of really nice things. The stock setup that I wouldn't want you to be disappointed to receive is a standard forged two-piece crank with a pressed on steel narrow wide, still 42 tooth chainring, still with that external bottom bracket detail. So I just don't want you to be upset if that's what you see in your local shop or if it's later this year at our shop. But at the moment, this is a very nice detail to see. And in that 24.25 pounds that I mentioned, I would say that I bet you the bikes that come with the proper specification, being that forged with a steel chainring, I wouldn't be surprised if that actually changes the weight up to about 25 pounds for something like a medium DSX2, just so you know. Back to the details here. We've got these new Marin Oso, what they're basically calling an OEM composite pedal. They are, for being a plastic pedal, actually quite nice quality. The bearings feel really good compared to a lot of bikes' stock composite or plastic pedals. So usually when I see plastic pedals on a bike, you spin them, they feel terrible to the touch and not great traction. In this case, actually, I think this is quite a good pedal. So unless you think you're going to be riding in really rough situations where I would suggest maybe doing a pedal that has separate steel pins and sealed bearings for longevity, I think this pedal may very well last you for a year or two before you're looking at upgrading it at all. Back to sort of details here. We have through axles, front and rear. Now a through axle, what that means is that the axle threads directly into both the fork leg and into the dropout on the back here. And they're 12 millimeter thick axles, so they basically add to the structural integrity of both the wheel, the hub, and the frame, giving a little bit more lateral support to the whole system. Looking at the frame, we have some empty ports here. What that is telling us is that this frame is ready for a dropper seat post. The seat post diameter is 27.2, so you don't have a huge selection of droppers available, but it is something that I think could be a popular upgrade, both for riding in really rough situations, using it like a dropper is used in a mountain bike situation, but also for a lot of commuting and city use. Being able to just pop your seat down easily is a really nice thing for traffic. When you're stopping at lights, you basically can just pop your seat down, and then as soon as you start pedaling, just pop your seat back up again. It is a luxury that once you get used to, you really appreciate. We have mounting positions for a rack here. We have mounting positions for fenders there. The dropout has the 2 threaded bosses. So this is fully ready to set up with fender and rack. We also have dual water bottle mounting positions here. We have this distinctive feature being the brace between the top tube and the seat tube. This helps us to get the top tube just a little bit lower for extra standover height, and I think is honestly put there to just give the bike a little bit of a distinctive sort of a look. Onto those carbon fiber forks. They also have a threaded, what would usually be called a threaded brake hole, but it's just a threaded hole for fenders there. And we have 3 threaded bosses on the fork leg. That could be for mounting rack or different sorts of cargo cages, or perhaps even just a water bottle cage if you're going to use this bike for a light bike packing bike, which is another one of the things that we've seen people use these for. I will say at this point, with this being a 25-pound bike with an aluminum frame, I don't consider it appropriate for heavy bike packing, because I know some people are interested in it for that. I just don't think that that was built into the frame's durability or strength. So just keep that in mind. It looks tempting for that, but I think it's just a little bit light. And if that was of interest to you, I would look at the Marin Mirrorwoods, which is a chromoly frame and fork bike that is somewhat similar in design concept to this DSX. So look at the Mirrorwoods if you're thinking about flat handlebars and bike packing while being able to handle a broad range of tire sizes. On the bottom of the fork here, we see one more threaded boss, and so that gives us mounting for full wrap fenders. Handlebars are an aluminum Marin handlebar with basically no rise to them. All of the bikes come with a 70mm stem. By all of them, I mean all sizes. And that's one of those places where we see a lot of those bikes that just have a less pleasing aesthetic from companies like Trek and Specialized. They get up to like 110 mil stems, I think, on some of their large size bikes. And it just isn't aesthetically pleasing in my mind. The last thing I'll look at, because if you look at the Marin website and if you look at the details on this bike, they're going to say that these brakes, these Tektro, I think they call them M285s, are a step up from the M280s that come on that lower model. I don't know what they mean. I went looking for information, and besides the fact that the brake caliper has a different shape to it, I don't know if there's anything about the 285s that is a noticeably better brake than a 280 or a 275. All that said, I'm not saying that these are bad brakes. I'm just saying that I don't understand the difference. I went looking. I'm not going to spend all day trying to do physics to figure out what the difference is. These Tektro brakes are more than capable of keeping up with this bike, so I don't want to leave you with the impression that brakes aren't good, just that I don't understand what the upgrade is from the 1 to the 2 in just changing the shape of the brakes. Those brakes, I should mention, are clamping down on 160mm rotors. Those rotors are attached to the hubs with a central lock system. What else can I tell you about this bike? For usage, I think I touched on it at the beginning of the video. This is a really fun bike path or gravel or pavement kind of a bike. So I think commuting, pleasure riding, gravel riding, all those things are going to be easily within the sort of realm of what makes sense on this bike. I think this bike will actually add some pleasure to some of those things where maybe wouldn't have quite the same pleasure with a traditional style hybrid bike. Things to consider on here: if the front end starts to feel a little bit low, which we've had a few people, a common upgrade on these bikes is going with handlebars with a little bit more rise to them, whether that be 30 or 50 millimeters of rise. The bike still looks good with a little bit more rise in the front end, so something to consider. This particular position on here, I think, favors a little bit more power generation to the pedals. Just the ergonomics of the seating position of lower hands gives you more power, but maybe harder on your hands and on your lower back. Other things to consider: if you're coming from a road bike, you might find the positioning, that distance from your hands to your butt, to feel a little bit compressed. That is done on purpose. This bike is not built purely for the ergonomics of power. They are trying to put you in a slightly more compressed position because in rougher situations that is going to put you in a better position to handle a bike. And in a bike path situation, you're in a position that is going to be easier to actually have your head up, seeing what's happening around you, as opposed to that full-on road racing position is about aerodynamics and power, and riding a very aerodynamic bike in a congested bike path situation will leave you with a sore neck. Another thing that people consider upgrading is actually adding bar ends to this. So if your planned use for this sees a lot of high mileage, adding bar ends will just give you a second pronounced position for your hands to be, which can be both a relief to your palms, not having pressure on the same area, and to your arms and shoulders, just being able to have a slightly different stretch and angle of your arms will help you to ride long distances in more comfort. And lastly, these grips, I don't find them to be particularly comfortable. So if I was doing any upgrades as far as comfort on this bike, I would consider either a slightly more ergonomic grip with a lock-on, or a more mountain bike inspired lock-on grip that was just more comfortable and less likely to basically spin on you if you ever get any kind of dirt underneath these friction fit grips. So this has been the 2024 Marin DSX 2. If you like videos where we look at details like this, consider liking, subscribing. Let me know what you think about this bike, if there's other bikes that you find that are good comparisons. I will mention, from all my searching when I was looking for competitors to this, Norco, being a brand that I have a lot of respect for, their Search XR is the one other bike. We don't sell Norco, but I will at least give them a shout out that theirs is the closest to this bike, but you will spend a couple $100 more on the XR that I found, at least, to get a lower level of specification with nothing that's really a standout improvement. So this is a unique bike. It is a good looking bike. I know that it has created a lot of excitement for a lot of people because it has been a good selling bike for us, and there is a tremendous amount of value. And this has been the Marin DSX2 in another Bike Bros video. Cheers!